Good morning, my love muffins. Reverend Sue here. Apparently our sermon this morning didn't have sound, so I'm going to do a brief sermon so that those who weren't in attendance can participate. Know the truth? I heard you. And the truth shall set us free. Well, I was talking about how that belief has had a lot of testing lately, and I'm glad I've been focused on techniques to hold that in your consciousness. Because I've had a lot of use for them lately. For those of you that didn't know, I got a call yesterday afternoon saying Reverend Denise was being taken to the hospital in an ambulance for a heart attack. Probably would have been a good idea if I asked a question or two, but instead I just said I'm on my way and hung up and drove there in a panic. And by the time I got there, the oh my God, what if horror had their clutches on my ideas. So I put out the word to the prayer ministry and leadership and friends and family to pray for her. And I began to practice the That's Life game, right? L-I-F-E, the living in faith every day and keeping a soft heart in hard times. I had a soft heart. It was like a mushy little puddle. But for a minute I found myself asking, so where's God? Where's God now? That's what we do, right? When we're in hard times. Where's your great and powerful Oz now? And I very quickly had a big sigh of relief because Denise called and went, oh my God, I wanted to be the one that called and told you, and I'm okay. And apparently she was cooking dinner and had what she described as a feeling of a fist squeezing in the center of her chest and then letting go. That was painful. And, she blew off the first one, the second one, and then, as they started to repeat, got concerned. So took her blood pressure, had high blood pressure, called her doctor like she should have, and the doctor said, do me a favor, get in an ambulance, go to the hospital, be checked out. And by the way, she wanted to send a message to the congregation that said, please tell everyone the squeezing in my heart has nothing to do with the love that I have for them. And the thing that you're missing, Denise, is I asked everyone if they had a message back, and the whole congregation screamed and hollered their love for you. Well, the immediate test that she had yesterday showed that everything was fine. Keeping her overnight so that she could go through observation and have an echocardiogram today to look and see if there was any blockage. But immediately they, and certainly her friends who know what she's going through, talked about the great stress that she's been experiencing and that it was probably anxiety. So thank God for the false alarm. So where's God now? That is oftentimes, in hard times, what we do. We question, where's God now? We look to outer conditions to determine if God is present. And we doubt and diminish and dismiss the presence of God and good if circumstances aren't glaringly the way we want them to be. And sometimes even then too. And it reminded me of a story of a woman who was driving around a mall parking lot during the holidays. And it was pouring outside and it was lightning and the parking lot was jammed and she just couldn't find a space anywhere. So she started doing the let's make a deal prayer. You know what they are, right? Please, God, I promise, if you just give me a parking space up front, I'll start going to church on Sundays. And bam, no sooner the prayer than a parking lot space right up by the front door opened. And as she pulled in, the woman said, never mind, God, I found one. See, that's what we do. Even though we got the answer to our prayer, we have a tendency to dismiss or minimize its significance. So here's what I was actually questioning. I was not questioning so much, where's God now? But why don't we notice God in good now and just gush in gratitude? Had Reverend Denise's circumstances gone a different way, I bet we would have doubted the presence of God in good. We would have done the where's God we would have ended up with either not believing in the potential of God or in our ability to know and hold this faith and truth. But interestingly, when we glaringly got what we wanted, we also seem to doubt and minimize and dismiss the presence of God. I mean, isn't it actually easier to believe that there wasn't a real problem to begin with? That there was just something like anxiety? Isn't it easier to believe that than to believe that our consciousness moved along of a loving God that restores and revitalizes and heals? That in fact, Denise was healed from any challenging condition she may have had. I don't question that. I was there when Denise had a stroke many, many years ago. And it was very severe. She had very high blood pressure, and I think the nurses were looking around very doubtful that she would recover. And Denise for days was in a fog. She, if somebody came in and talked, she would just kind of look at me and be like, you talk to him. And on the third day, she sat up in bed all of a sudden and said, I'm okay now. Literally, out of nowhere. Even the occupational therapists that had done assessments about what she might need as far as aftercare took the report down, and then the supervisor came up and did exactly the same exam. And she said, I'll tell you why I'm doing this. Based on your reports and the results that we've had so far, there's no way you should have scored on this test the way you did, that you don't need any services. She had no physical or cognitive dysfunction at all, just in a blink of an eye. She said the tip of her fingers were numb. I saw that change in front of my face. And I absolutely believe God and good were glaringly present. Where was God? God was there in all the consciousness that people held for her betterment. And in a very short period of time, a healing took place. Know the truth, and the truth set you free. Well, there's much about truth that I don't know. What I do know has changed my life. Changed it for the better, and changed it forever. And what I do know, or I should say, what this personal truth seeker has decided to believe I know, comes from the teachings of New Thought in general, and religious science and science of mind in particular. A teaching that specifically instructs us not to believe just because we're told something's true. Ernest Holmes emphasized over and over again, no intelligent person believes something just because someone else tells them it's true. And our belief system is based on our learning the principles and the practice, applying them, and then deciding for ourselves. Because truth is extracted from life. Because truth is constantly revealing itself. And consequently, our thoughts about truth are constantly evolving. So our truth journey is to question and to grow, not to learn and obey. That's why the people we draw to our New Thought churches are lifelong truth seekers and are so diversive in their various religious and cultural backgrounds. There was a story about a man stranded on a desert island, and finally, after 20 years, a Navy ship spotted him. When the captain came ashore, he noticed 3 huts. He pointed to them and he asked the maroon man, "Are you alone? Is there someone else here with you?" And the stranded man looked at the huts and said, "Oh, no, they're mine." "What are they used for?" the captain asked. "Well," the man replied, "the hut on the left is where I live, and the hut on the right is where I go to church." "And the one in the middle?" the captain asked. "Oh," said the stranded man, "that's just the church I used to attend." Well, that's what our spiritual journey is like. We develop a belief system, and we hold on to that until pieces of it maybe don't fit. Something else calls it that feels like it resonates with more truth, and we begin to pursue that belief system. Know the truth, and the truth shall set us free. Belief in a power greater than we are, aka spirituality, is not an obligation. It is a choice. Many people think something isn't true until science proves it true. But things are always true before science proves it true. And many others think that something isn't true unless the religion tells them it's true. But again, things are always true regardless of whether your religion tells you it's true or not. Science doesn't decide what is true. Religion doesn't decide what is true. We don't even decide what is true. Truth simply is true, and it needs nothing from us to be itself. So our decision has nothing to do with it. But we do get to decide what we believe is true. And that influences everything about our life. And we, at All Paths to God, believe in a presence and power greater than we are. And as we've said many times before, and as our song that started our service, One Power, suggests, it doesn't matter what we call it. Quantum physics calls it energy. Esther Hicks, one of my favorite channelers of the wisdom and intelligence of the universe, calls it source energy. The Chinese master Lao Tzu calls it the Tao, or the way. And the creator of Star Wars, George Lucas, calls it the Force. We call it God. But it doesn't matter what we call it. What matters is that God and good exist. And by whatever name we call it, there is no time and there is nowhere that it ends and we begin as separate from it. So, where's God now? Where's God when I need God the most? Same as always, right here. So our journey is to question and to grow. So here's a question I have for you. When is a good time to give up planning for the worst that can happen? If God is here right now, if good is here right now, it would seem that now is a good time. And how do we plan for the best that can happen, or at least better that can happen? We notice. We notice good things that have already happened. We keep a soft heart in hard times. Now we have to give up the grumble for the humble. The humble being the surrender. The humble being the awareness of this mystical power in the universe that is part of who we are. This is how we live in a way that our consciousness is no longer in conflict with its content. Our consciousness, our birthright, our spiritual heritage, that essence from which we came. Our consciousness is aligned with God as peace, love, joy, harmony. But the content of our personal mind consciousness is often in conflict with that. So how do we live in such a way that consciousness is not in conflict with its content? We have to make a radical shift in consciousness from the outer world to the inner world. From what happens to us to what happens through us. So we have to give up the grumble for the humble. We notice God and good all the time, everywhere, and we gush gratitude. A wise man once faced a group of people who were complaining about the same issues over and over again. We know that, right? Complain about the economy, we complain about politics, we complain about relationship issues, complaining about the same thing over and over again. So one day, instead of listening to the complaining, he told them a joke, and everyone cracked up laughing. When they all settled down, the man repeated the joke. A few people kind of nervously giggled. Everyone else just kind of didn't pay attention. When they settled down, the man repeated the joke again. Eventually, no one paid attention. The man smiled and said, "You don't laugh at the same joke more than once or over and over again. So what are you getting from continuing to complain about the same problem over and over and over again?" What are we getting? We're getting more of the problem. The moral is we must give up the grumble for the humble. The grumble will never serve any kind of good for us or anyone else. We simply can't put our energy into complaining about disturbance and arrive at God in good and peace and harmony. And what is the humble? It's gratitude. It's an awareness of the goodness that does happen in our lives. And gratitude is kind of an antidote for our painful longings of what we want but don't have. Gratitude's also an antidote for the distress of what we do have that we don't want. Our thoughts trigger our emotions, and our emotions generate vibrations, and our vibrations set a law of creation into motion. They're a blueprint for what our life experiences will be. So to give up the grumble, to embrace the humble, we have to practice and exercise and expand our use of gratitude in the good that already exists. If we're not grateful for what we have, how can we attract more to be grateful for in our lives? And we always begin the gratitude journey with the experiences we currently have. There's no place that we can get to that's any better, at least not before we get there in mind and heart and words and behaviors first. So we begin where we are and we practice gratitude for what is showing up in our lives right now. Goodness knows, for this experience, we found a lot of grumble easy to give up and a lot of things to be grateful for. I ran across a saying the other day, I'm not sure what it was. I think it was the title of a documentary. But it said, "We are living in the future's past." What a profoundism. I don't know what the future holds, but I do know the vibe we're putting out there today, even in hard times, especially in hard times, is crafting what we'll get more of tomorrow. Give up the grumble for the humble. We don't need to look for things to be grateful for. They already exist all around us. We need to recognize them. We need to draw attention to them. We need to notice that they're happening in us and around us, that they're always there. There was a story about an organization that was doing what was a project and turned into a rather extensive kind of research. But they began what they called the Oral History Project. The group was StoryCorps. And they began this project in New York City's Grand Central Station. And then it grew throughout the United States. But it started where they just took people from all walks of life and they asked them to narrate true stories in a studio recording booth. By the time it was done, after 10 years, they had over 100,000 people that participated and shared their stories, whatever story they wanted. There was no direction other than to share true stories about your life. And with an overwhelming majority, the story's common themes were love and gratitude. Because love and gratitude are always there. They only need to be noticed. If we want the world to be a better place, I heard you, we have to be a better person in it. Why? Because the world is made up of the people that are in it. And by better, I don't mean behave better and work to become more worthy or earn grace. I mean, we have to become more aligned with the truth of who we are, with this idea of this something greater than us living through us and expanding and expressing a sense of gratitude for that oneness. You know the profoundism. What if, when you woke up tomorrow, you only had what you were grateful for today? Well, that puts it in perspective. There's sometimes I'd wake up tomorrow in a barren room with probably a rabid tiger chasing me. It certainly brings your attention to what if all you had when you woke up tomorrow was what you were grateful for today. I can be very clear what I'm grateful for today. We are living in the future's past. We are the future's past. And if we want a better tomorrow, it starts with gratitude right here and right now. So your mission, my love muffins, if you so choose to accept it, is to give up the grumble for the humble. Say it with me. Give up the grumble for the humble. It's said that if thank you is the only prayer that's ever uttered, it would be enough. And there is so much that I am thankful for. So now is a good time to give up planning for the worst that can happen. To give up talking about the worst things that are happening. Because where's God now? Right here. Tuned in to our every vibe. So now is a good time to give up the grumble for the humble. We can't go back and make a new start, but we can start now and make a new ending. We are the people. Now is the time. This is the way. Namaste, my love muffins.